Toula, can you please tell us about yourself and mention to us a bit about why you got inspired to launch Talk to Teens?
Sure. I was inspired to launch Talk to Teens originally because I was actually trying to help my children. So my children were camping and they were having a great time, but they were struggling with a few emotional issues, and so I sat around the campfire and I started writing stories because I've always believed in the value of stories. I actually observed the Indigenous culture up in Katherine in the Northern Territory, where I went to Katherine State High School, and I used to watch the Indigenous young people sitting around talking and passing on important messages, and so I've always believed in the value of stories, and so I developed Talk to Teens as a consequence of actually writing stories to help my own children, and then over time I started using those stories in my counselling practice and therapy, as well as in schools as a guidance officer, intensive behaviour support, and I found I got very good results with the stories. So I then decided to create Talk to Teens, which is a public awareness company, to try to encourage parents, teachers and counsellors to talk to children and youth through stories and images. So teens and pre-teens basically.
Can you tell us about that story, image, tools and therapy?
Sure. Story, image, therapy and tools is the therapeutic technique that has evolved out of Talk to Teens. It's a delivery method, educational delivery method of delivering important psychological information, educational, as well as cultural and historical information. So it is used as a therapy in story image therapy, as well as story image tools are the actual tools that we use. So the tools might be YouTube video clips, they might be posters, pictures, diagrams, might also be oral in the form of telling a story like The Frog and the Scorpion, or Dreamtime stories.
And what is the need of this kind of work in your experience?
The need of this type of work, I believe that there's an increasing need, unfortunately, and the research is supporting that. We now have 1 in 4 young people with mental health problems in Australia, and that's a real concern for me, both as a mother of 3 teenagers as well as a professional in the field. And so I've been very concerned about the young people that I've been counselling and thinking, how can we help our youth? What can we do? And I really do believe that the best way that we can actually get important information across is to do it through stories and images. So, yeah.
You have a wealth of clinical and research experience. In your personal experience, can storytelling actually benefit with stress reduction and promote more optimal living attitudes and behaviours?
Yes, look, in my experience it certainly works. I have used the story of The Frog and the Scorpion, which is an adaptation of Aesop's fable, which is a story that was written almost 3,000 years ago. And so I have used that story with over 200 of my clients now, and I've asked them for their written and verbal feedback, and overwhelmingly I've been informed that they are finding the stories very helpful. I'm also working with Indigenous organisations using the story image tools as part of an Indigenous program, and again, the information that I'm receiving is very positive, that people are finding it very helpful, and so I'm doing my private research as well as my PhD. I'm doing PhD research as well about how to help young people with their mental health problems using technology. So we can have oral, we can have written, or we can have digital storytelling. And it seems that the research that's coming out is that that is a very effective way of helping our youth.
And do you have any evidence of the effectiveness of using stories and images?
Well, the evidence is gathering. I haven't got it all yet, but certainly the Indigenous organisations that I'm working with have taken this on board. Child safety services, Indigenous child safety, are certainly very interested in what's happening with story image therapy, and because the feedback that is coming back is very positive. So in terms of being able to help reduce behavioural and mental health problems, it's the evidence is starting to show that it is actually a very effective method. But I'm doing a lot more research on that, just to make sure that that is actually what's happening, and if there are other ways that we can improve it.
And what role do you think story image therapy tools has for the general population? Is it effective for adults as well as children?
Yeah, look, stories and images are everywhere. They're in our everyday life. They're in books. They are in, movies. They're in songs, poetry, art, sculpture. I mean, it goes on, because human beings relate to stories. We relate to pictures. We relate to stories. And every picture tells a story. So if we want to connect with our young people, then we use stories and images. But equally, I'm finding story image therapy and tools I'm using with adults as well, and I'm getting really good feedback. So I think it's relevant to all ages to help them to work through their mental health and behavioural issues.
Okay, there is a practice in mind-body medicine that you can essentially rewrite a story for somebody through hypnosis.
Sure.
A person re-experiences a negative impression and redefines that experience into a positive lesson. Can story image therapy and tools play a similar role in helping to rewrite a person's individual story or narrative?
Story image therapy and tools is about the person reading a story, listening to a story, seeing an image as part of a story, and then creating their own significant story. And that's the story that is significant to them. And so, yes, it is effective for all ages, and yes, you can help people to create their own narrative and change their own narrative through a story. They start to identify with the characters in the story. They start to see themselves in a different perspective through the characters, and you find that it actually helps build the bond, but it also helps them with cognitive reframing, because they can see their own cognitions through the perspective of the character. So it does make a big difference.
And what do you feel are the limitations of story image therapy and tools as a method for self-development?
I don't see any limitations at this point in time with story image therapy and tools. I'm sure over time that there will be some limitations that come out. The only thing I have found is that some of my clients will see the frog and the scorpion story, for example, as themselves, and say, I am a frog, or I am a scorpion, or whatever. And the purpose of the story of the frog and the scorpion is to explain behaviour. And what I do say to people is it is a continuum. It's a sliding scale, so sometimes people will act like a frog, sometimes they will act like a scorpion, depending on their level of caring. And individuals can act like a frog in some areas, but like a scorpion in other areas. So it's not just a case of saying this is right and this is wrong, and we should all be frogs. Sometimes people do get that impression, but that's actually not the intention. The intention is to describe behaviour and help the person to identify with a particular type of behaviour, and then work out ways of getting the balance of 80, which is the key message. Is the frog and the scorpion story is a way of delivering the message, which is aim for the balance of 80, so caring 80% in most areas of life.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, Bryce.